The barrel of Jonah Ridge's rifle settled square between the woman's eyes, and his hand did not shake. 3 days in my cabin, he said, voice low and ruined. 3 days eating my food, sleeping under my roof. And every word out of your mouth has been a lie. She did not flinch, did not beg. She only looked up at him with eyes too old for her face and whispered, "If you pull that trigger, the men hunting me will find you anyway. And what they'll do to you will be worse than what they'll do to me." Before we go any further into this story, do me a small kindness, hit that subscribe button and the little bell beside it, because this is only the beginning, and what comes next will test every belief Jonah Ridge ever held about mercy money and the cost of keeping a stranger alive. And while you're here, drop a comment and tell me what city or town you're listening from. I love reading where my stories travel, and it means the world to know you're walking these frozen Rockies with me. Now let's go back to where it started. Jonah Ridge had been a trapper for 19 winters, and he knew 3 rules the mountain had carved into him like a brand. The first rule was simple. You don't share fire with strangers because strangers bring trouble, and trouble in the Rockies didn't knock. It walked in through the door with a loaded gun. The second rule was harder. You don't ask questions about the dead. The dead in these mountains were usually dead for a reason, and that reason usually wore boots and carried a grudge. The third rule was the one he'd broken exactly once in his life, and the scar across his ribs was there to remind him every time he took off his shirt. You don't help, not a man, not a woman, not a half-frozen stray dog, because even a dog could be a trap set by someone meaner than the dog. So when Jonah came down the ridge that morning, with 2 rabbits on his belt, and saw the dark shape half buried in the snow at the base of the pines, his first thought was to walk the long way around. His second thought was that he already had, and that was the problem. He was 200 yards past it and still thinking about it. "Keep walking, old man," he muttered to himself, and his own voice sounded like gravel under a boot. "Ain't your concern." But something had caught his eye. Something wrong. Not the shape. The color. No man in these mountains wore pale blue. No trapper, no scout, no Indian, no soldier. Pale blue meant soft fabric. Soft fabric meant a woman. And a woman dead in the snow at 6,000 feet, 70 miles from the nearest settlement, meant one of 2 things. Either someone had put her there, or someone was still hunting for her. Jonah stopped. He turned. He stared back down the slope for a long, hard minute, and the wind chewed on his beard and told him everything he needed to know. Damn it! He walked back. Shui. She was a long way past any business being alive. Her lips were blue. Her fingers were curled into a fist so tight the knuckles had split. Her hair was the color of wet wheat, and there was a smear of something dark crusted above her left eyebrow that might have been blood, or might have been pine sap, or might have been both. Jonah crouched down beside her and did not touch her. "Lady," he said flat, "you pickin' a hell of a place to die." She didn't answer. He hadn't expected her to. He reached out 2 fingers, pressed them to the side of her throat, under the torn collar of what had once been a very expensive coat, and he waited. Nothing. 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 And then, faint as a moth beating against glass, a pulse. Jonah exhaled through his teeth. Ah, hell. That was the moment he could have stood up and walked away. He wanted to. Every instinct in him, every scar, every rule, every hard-earned year of solitude was screaming at him to stand up and walk away and let the mountain finish what someone else had started. He did not stand up. He slid his arms under her, and she weighed nothing. That was the first thing that struck him. She weighed nothing at all, like he'd picked up a bundle of kindling wrapped in a coat. And when her head rolled back against his shoulder, he saw her throat, and her throat had marks on it. Not animal marks, not fall marks, finger marks. "Somebody," Jonah said quietly to nobody, "is gonna be mighty disappointed when I ain't where I'm supposed to be." And he started the long walk back to the cabin. Good. She did not wake that day. She did not wake that night. Jonah stripped the ruined coat off her by the fire and found that whatever she had been before the mountain got to her, she had been something. The dress underneath was silk, real silk. He'd seen it once in a St. Louis shop window when he was 19, and still believed the world had a place for him that wasn't this one. There was a ring on a chain around her neck. Gold. Heavy. He did not look close enough to read the engraving. He told himself he didn't care. He wrapped her in every blanket he owned, and built the fire until the cabin was hot enough to make a man sweat, and then he sat in the chair by the door with his rifle across his knees and watched her breathe. She breathed like somebody who was still deciding whether to. Around 3 in the morning she started to whimper, not loud, soft, the kind of sound a child makes when it doesn't want to be heard. "No," she whispered. "No, please, please don't." Jonah sat up straighter in the chair. "Please, Father, please." Jonah's jaw set. "He'll kill me," she breathed, eyes closed, still deep in whatever dark country her mind had run to. "He'll kill me. Father, don't make me go back." And then she went still again. Jonah sat in the dark and listened to the wind push against the shutters, and for the first time in a very long time, he was glad he had broken his rule. Because whoever had put those finger marks on her throat, whoever had sent her running into a blizzard in a silk dress, whoever her father was, Jonah Ridge was going to make it his business to know. She woke on the 3rd day. He was at the table cleaning a trap, and he heard the blankets shift, and he didn't turn around. "Don't try to sit up," he said. Silence. The kind of silence that meant somebody was measuring a room for a way out. "Ain't no door you're gonna reach before I catch you," he added. "Ain't no gun in this cabin you're gonna find before I do. And there's 4 feet of snow on everything between here and the nearest soul, so settle back and drink the water on the stool by your head." A long pause. Then a voice hoarse, careful, and a great deal more polished than it had any right to be. "Who are you?" Jonah turned around. She was propped up on one elbow, hair a wild tangle around her face, and her eyes, God, her eyes. Green. Sharp. Not the eyes of a woman who had been dying 4 days ago, the eyes of a woman who was already counting exits. "Jonah Ridge," he said. "Trapper. This is my cabin. Found you in the snow down the ridge. You remember how you got there?" She didn't answer that. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Just a breath. Just long enough for Jonah to know that whatever name came out of her mouth next was going to be a lie. "Lillian," she said. "Lillian Voss." "Uh-huh," Jonah said. "It's my name. I didn't say it wasn't. You were going to." "I was gonna finish cleaning this trap," Jonah said. "Drink your water, Miss Voss." She drank. Her hand shook the whole way to her mouth, and Jonah watched her fingers, and he noted that they were long and fine, and had no calluses on them anywhere a working woman would have calluses. The nails had been manicured recently enough that he could still see where the shape had been filed. "Lillian Voss." "Sure." "Mr. Ridge," she said, setting the cup down. "I am very grateful for your kindness. If you could tell me the nearest town, I will arrange to have payment." "Ain't no town close enough to arrange anything from?" "Then the nearest road." "Snowed under till April." "April," she repeated. The word landed between them like a stone down a well. "April," Jonah said. She looked at the window. She looked at the door. She looked at the rifle on the wall. And Jonah watched her do all of it, and watched her face change by degrees, and saw the exact moment she understood that she was not escaping this cabin, and nobody was coming for her in it, and the only person between her and whatever was out there was a man she'd met 90 seconds ago. "I'd like to go back to sleep now," she said quietly. "Suit yourself." She laid down. She pulled the blanket up to her chin. And Jonah turned back to his trap and said without looking, "Lady, whoever put them marks on your neck, they're gonna come looking, sooner or later." He heard her breath catch. "You might want to think," he said, "about whether the name you give me next time is the real one." She did not answer, but she did not sleep either. He could tell by the rhythm of her breathing. And he sat at that table and cleaned that trap for another 2 hours, and neither of them said a single word, and the fire cracked and the wind howled, and somewhere out past the tree line a wolf called, and another one answered. On the 5th day she tried to leave. Jonah had gone out at dawn to check his line, and when he came back the cabin was empty, and the door was ajar, and her tracks in the snow went maybe 80 feet before they staggered, circled and collapsed in a little heap under a spruce. He carried her back inside for the second time, and this time he didn't bother being gentle. "You want to die," he said, dropping her on the cot. "Let me go." "To where? Who's out there, lady?" "Who the hell is out there you'd rather freeze to death than tell me about—" "Let me go!" "No!" She swung at him. Flat hand, open palm, weak as a child, and it caught him across the cheek, and it stung more than it should have because there was real fury behind it. Jonah did not move, did not raise his voice. "Hit me again if it helps," he said quietly. "But when you're done, you're gonna lay back down and you're gonna eat and you're gonna get strong because whatever you're running from, you ain't gonna outrun it in the shape you're in." Her face crumpled. She did not cry. She was too tired to cry. She just put her hands over her eyes and sat there on the cot, shaking, and Jonah went to the stove and put the coffee on and did not look at her. "He owns everything," she whispered after a long while. "You understand me, Mr. Ridge? Everything. Every sheriff, every judge, every newspaper from Denver to Chicago. There is no town I can walk into where someone he pays doesn't recognize my face. Then we ain't walking into a town. You don't understand what he'll do." "Then tell me." She looked up at him, and her eyes were rimmed red, and her mouth was a hard line, and Jonah Ridge saw for just a moment through the polished speech and the silk dress and the soft hands. Saw the girl underneath, the one somebody had tried to strangle, the one who had crawled out of something and kept crawling until the snow took her, and he felt something twist in his chest that he had not felt in a very long time. "My name," she said, "is not Lillian Voss." "Figured. And if I tell you what it is, it will cost you your life. Do you understand? The men looking for me, they do not leave witnesses. They do not leave cabins. They do not leave bodies for anyone to find." Jonah poured 2 cups of coffee. He set one beside her. He kept the other for himself, and he sat down across from her, and he looked her in the eye. "Lady," he said, "I've been alone in this cabin 19 winters. Ain't a soul in the world would come looking if I didn't come back down the mountain in spring. So whatever's coming for you, it was coming for me the second I carried you through that door. So you may as well tell me the real name, seeing as we're dying together anyhow." She stared at him, and then very quietly she laughed. It was a small, broken, wondering sound, like she hadn't laughed in so long she'd forgotten the shape her mouth made when it did. "Mr. Ridge," she said. "Jonah." "Jonah." She swallowed. "My father's name was spoken in every boardroom from New York to San Francisco. His signature moved more iron and steel than any man alive. When he died, his business passed to his only child, me." Jonah set down his coffee. "And the man hunting me," she went on, voice thin as a knife's edge, "is the man my father handpicked to marry me, to unite 2 empires. I was to sign the papers on my 23rd birthday." She let out a breath. "That was 4 weeks ago. And instead you ran." "Instead, I ran." "How far?" "Chicago to Denver by train. Denver to the foothills with a driver I paid to forget my face. The foothills to these mountains on foot." Her voice cracked. "Until the cold took me." Jonah was very still. "Why kill you?" he asked. "If he wanted to marry you, why put them marks on your throat?" Her eyes went somewhere far away. "Because the night before I ran," she said, "I found a letter in his desk. A letter that if it reaches the right hands will not merely ruin him, it will hang him." Jonah did not move. "And where's that letter now, lady?" She met his eyes. "Sewn," she said, "into the lining of the coat you pulled off me." Jonah Ridge did not sleep that night. He sat in the chair by the door with his rifle across his knees and that ruined pale blue coat in his lap, and he felt along the hem with his fingers, and sure enough, there was something stiff folded into the silk. Paper. Thick paper. Folded small and stitched in with a woman's careful hand. He did not open it. He did not want to know yet. Once he knew, he couldn't unknow, and a man who didn't know could still pretend maybe for another hour or two that his life hadn't just cracked straight down the middle. On the cot, she was finally sleeping. Real sleep. Not the thrashing kind. Jonah looked at her for a long time in the low firelight, and he thought about all the winters behind him, and all the rules he'd kept, and the one he'd broken. Then far off somewhere down the ridge, a dog barked. Jonah's head came up. A trapper's cabin 19 miles from the nearest trail. In February, at 4 in the morning. And a dog. He stood up slow, set the coat on the table, took the rifle off his knees and crossed to the window and eased back the corner of the shutter with one finger, and he stared out into the black. For a long moment there was nothing. Only the wind. Only the snow. And then down through the trees, through the dark, a light. One light, moving, coming up the ridge. Jonah Ridge lowered the shutter very carefully. He turned and looked at the woman sleeping on his cot, and at the coat on his table, and at the fire burning low in the grate, and he spoke only one word, and he spoke it soft, because he did not want to wake her yet. Found us. He crossed the cabin in 3 strides and put his hand over her mouth, before he shook her shoulder, because a woman waking afraid in a strange bed was a woman who screamed, and a scream now would cost them both. Her eyes flew open under his palm. "Don't," Jonah breathed. "Don't make a sound. Nod if you hear me." She nodded. He took his hand away. "Somebody's coming up the ridge. One light, maybe a dog, maybe more than one man, I can't tell yet. You're gonna get up. You're gonna take this blanket, and you're gonna climb into the root cellar under the floorboards yonder. You ain't gonna breathe loud. You ain't gonna move. And no matter what you hear through them boards, you ain't coming up till I tap 3 times on the trapdoor. You understand me? Jonah, you understand me?" "Yes." "Move." She moved. She moved faster than a woman 4 days off a deathbed had any right to move. And Jonah filed that away too, because whoever she'd been before the snow, she had been trained to run. By somebody. At some point. And that was a thing to know. He lifted the rug. He lifted the trapdoor. She climbed down into the dark without a word, and the last thing he saw of her was her white face looking up and her lips forming the shape of something that might have been please or might have been thank you. And then he let the trapdoor fall and kicked the rug back over it and turned and looked at the cabin. 2 coffee cups on the table. He grabbed one, threw the coffee into the fire, shoved the cup onto the high shelf with his tin plates. The pale blue coat was still on the chair. He balled it up, stuffed it under his own bedroll, flipped the blanket over it. Her boots. Small boots. Ladies' boots. He kicked them under the cot. Her ring on the chain she had that around her own neck still good. He sat down at the table. He put the rifle across his lap. He picked up the trap he'd been cleaning 4 hours ago, and he made his hands move like a man who had been doing exactly this and nothing else, and he waited. The dog barked again closer. A voice called out from maybe 30 feet beyond the door. "Hello, the cabin." Jonah said nothing. "Hello, the cabin, peaceful traveler seeking fire, and a word, nothing more." Jonah set the trap down. He picked up the rifle. He walked to the door, and he did not open it. "State your business through the wood." "Name's Coyle Friend, Samuel Coyle. Rode up from Denver 3 weeks back. Lost the trail in the last snow. Seen your smoke from the draw." "No, you didn't." A pause. "Beg pardon?" "You didn't see my smoke. I damped the fire at sundown. Ain't been smoke off this chimney in 6 hours. Try again." Another pause. Longer. And then a small dry laugh on the other side of the door. The kind of laugh a man uses when a card he'd meant to play gets slapped off the table. "Fair enough, Mr. B. Ridge." "Mr. Ridge. Truth is, I'm tracking. Lost soul came through these hills. Young woman. Family's half sick with worry. Offering considerable for her safe return." "How considerable?" $5,000. Jonah did not answer right away. He let the silence do the work. Let Coyle hear a man thinking the number over. Let Coyle believe for just a breath that he had the thing he'd come for. That's a lot of money, Mr. Coyle. It is. Enough money a man'd be a fool to split it. I ride alone, Mr. Ridge. Then you're a brave man or a lion one. Which? The laugh again. Thinner this time. Open the door, friend. Let's talk like Christians. I ain't a Christian, Mr. Coyle, and I ain't your friend, and the door stays shut. You want to talk? You talk through it. I seen no woman. I seen no tracks. Ain't been nothin' through this pass but me and the wind since the first hard snow. Mind if I walk your perimeter? Set my mind at ease. I mind considerable. Mr. Ridge. Mr. Coyle, I got a rifle pointed at the center of this door about chest high on a tall man. You walk the perimeter of my cabin. I'm gonna assume you're circling to come in a window, and I'm gonna shoot through this door about the time your shadow crosses it. We understand each other. A long, long silence, and then softer and very much more dangerous. Coyle said, You sure you ain't seen her, Mr. Ridge? I'm sure, 'cause she's a fine-looking woman. Yellow hair, green eyes, wore a pale blue coat last anybody laid eyes on her. Under the floorboards, Lillian did not breathe. Jonah could feel her not breathing the way a man feels a held note in a hymn. I'd remember a woman like that, he said. I expect you would. I ain't seen her. Then I'll be on my way. Fire's warmer down at the draw anyhow. You do that. Mr. Ridge. Mr. Coyle. You change your mind about that 5,000, you come find me. Any white man between here and the Wyoming line can tell you where I'm camped. I won't change my mind. Men always say that, before. The boots crunched away. The dog whined once, and then the whine went with them, and Jonah stood at that door and counted to 600, slow, before he moved a muscle. Then he walked to the window. He eased back the shutter. He watched the light go down the ridge and keep going and not stop, and only when it was gone completely did he cross back to the rug and lift it and tap 3 times on the trap door. She came up like somebody pulled from a well. He said $5,000, she whispered. He did. Jonah, I heard him, lady. You could have... I know what I could have done. Sit down before you fall down. She did not sit down. She stood there in the middle of his cabin in his shirt and his blanket, and her hands were shaking, and her mouth was shaking, and she said, Why didn't I what? Take the money. Jonah looked at her a long moment. Lady, he said, I ain't a good man. Don't mistake me for one. I just ain't the kind of bad that sells a woman to a man who put finger marks on her neck. There's a difference. You'd do well to learn it now, 'cause there's a lot more Coyles between here and anywhere you're going. He'll come back. Yes, he will. He'll bring others. Yes, he will. Tonight. No, he's gonna ride down, he's gonna wire somebody, and he's gonna sit on that wire till somebody tells him what to do. Man like that don't move alone once he smells money. He's gonna wait for the pack. How long? 2 days, maybe 3. Depends how close the wire is. She sat down then. She sat down right on the floor where she was standing, and she put her forehead against her knees. And Jonah let her do it. He went to the stove. He put water on. He did not look at her. After a long while, he said without turning, the letter. Yes. I need to know what's in it. Jonah, lady, I just lied to a bounty man for you. I just passed up more money than I've seen in 19 winters of cold nights and empty traps for you. And I'm about to run out of this cabin in February in 4 feet of snow with you, 'cause staying is death and you know it and I know it. So I need to know what's in that letter. I need to know what I'm dying for. She was quiet a long time. His name, she said finally, is Alistair Crane. Jonah turned around. Of Crane Iron and Rail. You know him. Every man in this country knows him. His rail runs 200 miles from here. Then you understand what we are up against. No, ma'am. I understand what you are up against. I ain't decided yet what I am. She looked up at him. Yes, you have, she said quietly. You decided the minute you didn't open that door. Jonah did not answer that. He went to his bedroll. He lifted the blanket. He took out the ruined pale blue coat, and he carried it to the table, and he laid it down between them like a body. Show me, he said. Her fingers went to the hem. She worked at the stitching with her teeth and her thumbnail because she did not have a knife, and after a minute the thread gave, and she drew it out, a folded square of paper, cream-colored, heavy as a playing card, and sealed with wax that had been broken and pressed back together. She unfolded it. She turned it around. She slid it across the table to him. Jonah Ridge could read. Not well, but enough. He read slow, and he read twice, and by the second reading his jaw had set so hard a muscle was jumping in it. "This says," he said carefully, "that your daddy didn't die of a bad heart." "No. This says Alistair Crane paid a man named Edgar Holm $3,000 and a share of the Colorado line to put something in your daddy's brandy the night before the wedding papers were to be signed." "Yes. And this here at the bottom, this is Alistair Crane's own hand." "It is. How'd you get it?" "The morning after my father died, Alistair came to the house to console me. He was in my father's study for an hour. When he left, the study was locked. It had never been locked before." Her voice went flat. 3 days later, I broke the lock. The letter was in the back of a drawer that had not been there a week before. It was a drawer my father had built Jonah. He showed it to me when I was 9 years old. Alistair did not know about it. He hid the letter in the only place in that house he thought no one would ever look, and he hid it in the one place I had known about since I was a little girl. Jonah stared at the paper. "He killed your daddy to marry you. He killed my father because my father had decided not to let him marry me. My father learned something about him. Something to do with a girl in Pittsburgh, a girl who went into the river. My father told Alistair the engagement was over. Alistair smiled and shook his hand and came to dinner that night with flowers. My father was dead by morning." Jonah set the letter down. "And you were going to marry this man." "I was going to marry this man," she said, "because until the morning I broke that lock, I believed he loved me." The silence after that was a bad one. Jonah pulled out a chair. He sat down. He looked at the letter on the table, and he looked at the woman across from him, and he rubbed his hand down his face until his beard rasped. "Lady, I got to ask you something, and I need you to tell me true, and I need you to understand if you lie to me now, I am gonna know, 'cause I ain't a stupid man. Ask. He choke you himself, or he send somebody?" She did not answer. "Lady. Himself." Jonah did not move for a long moment. Then he stood up. He walked to the wall. He took down the rifle, and he took down the second rifle behind it, and he took down the long skinning knife he did not touch except in the worst weeks of winter, and he laid the three of them on the table beside the letter. "All right," he said. "All right what?" "All right, we're going." "Where?" "Away from here. Tonight. In about 4 hours when the moon's down. Coyle's gonna come back with men. He's gonna come back with a warrant, maybe if Crane's got that much reach. He's gonna come back with dogs for sure. And when he does, this cabin's gonna be an empty cabin, and the tracks out of here are gonna be going 6 different directions, 'cause I know this mountain, and he don't. Jonah, I can't walk a mile in this snow." "You ain't gonna walk. I got a sled." "A sled?" "Trapper's sled, for hauling meat. I'm gonna haul you." "Haul me where?" "There's a man," Jonah said slowly, 2 ridges south. "Used to be a lawman down in Kansas 'fore he came up here to forget things. Name's August Penn. He owes me a life. His life specifically. I reckon it's time I called it in." "Can we trust him?" "No, ma'am, but we can trust that he pays his debts." She laughed again, that small, broken, wondering laugh. "What?" Jonah said. "Nothing." "Say it." "I'm just—" She shook her head. "I'm just trying to remember the last time I asked a man a question, and he gave me an answer with no lie in it. And I can't remember, Jonah. I honestly can't remember." Jonah looked away from her because there was something in her face just then that he was not equipped to look at straight on. "Go put on every dry thing you can find," he said. "Socks first 2 pair, then them trousers off the hook, then 2 shirts, then my coat. Boots ain't gonna fit, but I'll wrap your feet. We leave in 3 hours." She stood up. She did not move toward the clothes. "Jonah." "What?" "If we're caught." We ain't gonna be caught. If we are, I want you to know. Lady. Margaret. Jonah stopped. What? Margaret, she said again. My name is Margaret Ellery. My father was Thomas Ellery of Ellery Steel. I was born in Pittsburgh on the 9th of June, 1859. I was an only child. My mother died when I was 4. And the last man I told my real name to was my father, and he has been 3 months in the ground. Jonah Ridge did not know where to put his hands. Margaret, he said, slow, like he was trying the shape of it. Please do not use it until we are alone again. Lillian is safer. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Jonah. For what? For the trap you're cleaning, for the coffee, for the door you kept shut. Her eyes were wet, but nothing came down her cheeks. For asking. She went to the hook. She took down the trousers. She began to dress. Jonah turned his back, and he worked the action of the second rifle, and he checked the load twice, and he did not trust his hands to do anything else just then. Outside, far down the ridge, the dog barked one more time. It was farther away this time, but it was not as far as it should have been. Jonah crossed to the window. He eased the shutter. He watched. There was no light now. Coyle had put his lantern out, which meant Coyle had not gone down the ridge at all, which meant Coyle was sitting somewhere in the dark between here and the draw, watching this cabin and waiting to see what came out of it. Lady, Jonah said without turning. Yes. Change of plan. What do you mean? He didn't leave. He heard her stop moving. He's sitting out there, Jonah said, in the dark waiting for us to run, which means we ain't running. Not yet. Which means I'm going out that door in about 10 minutes, and I am going to find him before he finds us, and I am going to have a conversation with him, and only one of us is going to walk back up that ridge when the conversation is over. Jonah, bar the door when I'm out. You don't open it for anybody. Not a voice you know. Not a voice that sounds like mine. Not for a man begging and not for a man bleeding. You don't open it till I knock 3 times, then 2, then 1. You got that? 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Anybody else knocks, you put the second rifle through the door. I have never fired a rifle in my life. You point it about chest high on a tall man and you pull the trigger. It'll do the rest. She stood in the middle of the cabin in his too big coat with her hair down her back and her hands at her sides. And she looked at him and she said, Come back, Jonah Ridge. He picked up the rifle. I aim to. He opened the door. He stepped out into the dark. He pulled the door shut behind him, and he heard the bar slide home on the other side, and he stood there for one breath with his back against the wood, feeling the cold bite through his coat, feeling 19 winters of rules behind him and one woman in front of him, and he thought very clearly, very simply, like a man who had just laid down a hand of cards and walked away from the table. Well, so this is how it ends, or this is how it begins. One or the other. And then Jonah Ridge stepped off the porch into the snow and went hunting. The snow muffled everything, which meant it muffled him too, and Jonah counted that a fair trade. He did not go down the path, he went up, straight up the slope behind the cabin, hand over hand through the spruce, because a man lying in wait watched the front, the back, and the sides, but almost never the uphill. Uphill was where the wind came from. Uphill was where nothing came from. Uphill was where Jonah Ridge had spent 19 winters learning which branch would hold his weight and which would not, and Samuel Coyle had spent maybe 6 hours guessing. He came around above the draw on the high side, and he lay down in the snow, and he breathed slow through his nose, because breath through the mouth made clouds and clouds made a man, and he waited. 4 minutes, 6, and there the tiniest orange spark. A man cupping a hand around a match to light a cigarette he shouldn't have been lighting. Jonah smiled with no warmth in it. Samuel, he breathed to no one. Samuel, Samuel, Samuel. He slid down the slope on his belly, like an otter down a bank, and the last 12 feet he came up silent as a held breath, and when the barrel of his rifle kissed the back of Coyle's neck, Coyle did not even flinch. A man who did not flinch had done this work before. Evenin', Mr. Ridge. Evenin', Mr. Coyle. Drop it. Drop what? The derringer in your left hand you think I can't see. The knife in your right boot you're about to decide ain't worth it. And that dog'll keep its mouth shut if you tell it to, so tell it. A pause. Stay, Coyle said softly to the animal. The dog stayed. Now the derringer. The little gun went into the snow. Now on your knees, hands on your head, face toward the cabin. You gonna shoot me, Mr. Ridge? I ain't decided. 'Cause if you're gonna, I'd rather get it over with 'fore my knees freeze. On your knees. Coyle got on his knees. Jonah walked around to face him, rifle never off him, and he crouched down and looked the man in the eye for the first time. Samuel Coyle had a face like a dried apple. 45 maybe 50 cheeks, seamed from weather, and a nose that had been broken and reset wrong. The eyes were what a man had to watch. The eyes were still working. Who sent you? Jonah said. Gentleman in Denver. Name. Ain't the kind of work comes with names, Mr. Ridge. You ought to know that. Try again. Honest to God, friend? Jonah shifted the rifle 6 inches and fired into the snow beside Coyle's knee. The crack rolled down the draw and came back twice. The dog whimpered. Coyle did not move, but his mouth got tight. Next one's meat, Jonah said. Name. Holm. Edgar Holm. Jonah went very still. Say that again. Edgar Holm. Works out of Denver. Runs a crew of maybe 8 men, does this kind of work when there's money in it. He wired me 2 weeks ago, said a woman come through, said there was 5,000 on her head, said he'd split fair. Edgar Holm, you sure? Sure as I'm kneeling in snow with a rifle on my chest. Jonah's jaw had gone hard enough to crack teeth. Edgar Holm was the name in Margaret's letter. Edgar Holm was the man who had put something in Thomas Ellery's brandy. Edgar Holm was supposed to be a name on paper, a name 3 months old, a name that belonged to history. Edgar Holm was 20 miles away and sending men. How many others? Jonah said, and his voice had changed. Others what? Others looking for her, this ridge, these mountains. How many? 6 I know of. Maybe more he ain't told me about. We're spread thin, 'cause we don't know which pass she took. I drew this one. Fella named Dawes drew the southern line. 2 more working out of the old Bellamy camp. Rest is down in the foothills. When's Holm coming up? He ain't coming up himself. Then who is? Coyle's mouth twitched. Mr. Coyle. Crane. The word landed in the snow between them like a hot coal. Alistair Crane is coming up this mountain. He's already in Denver, Mr. Ridge. Been there 4 days, staying in the Windsor Hotel in a suite with the curtains drawn. He don't move till somebody tells him she's found. Then he moves fast. He's got a private car on the Rio Grande, can be hitched and rollin' in 2 hours. He'd be at the foothills by mornin', and up this pass by the second night after. Why's he comin' himself? Mister, I don't ask them kind of questions. I get paid to find. He gets paid to finish. Jonah stared at him. He's comin' himself, Jonah said slowly, because he don't trust any of you to do the last part right. I expect so. He's comin' himself because he wants to do it himself. I expect that too. Jonah breathed out a long breath, and it fogged the air white between them, and he stood up. Get up. Mr. Ridge. Get up, Samuel. Coyle got up. The dog crept closer. Coyle put a hand on its head without looking down, and the gesture was so small and so human that for half a second Jonah almost forgot what the man in front of him did for a living. You got a horse in the draw. I do. You're gonna ride it down. You're gonna ride it past the foothills, and you're gonna keep riding till you hit Texas. You're gonna wire Edgar Holm from the first station and tell him you followed the wrong trail. And the woman ain't on this ridge, she's on the northern line up near the Wyoming border. He ain't gonna believe me. He'll believe you for 2 days. 2 days is all I need. And if I don't... Jonah smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Samuel, I got a letter in that cabin written in Alistair Crane's own hand that names you, names Holm, names the brandy, and names a girl in Pittsburgh went into the river. The letter's already copied. The copy's already been mailed. If I don't come down this mountain in 30 days, That copy hits a newspaper desk in Chicago, and every man whose name is on it hangs, including yours. My name ain't on it. It will be by tomorrow morning. I can write." Coyle looked at him a long time. "You're bluffing." "You willing to bet your neck I am?" A long silence. "Texas is warm this time of year," Coyle said. "It is." "You a man keeps his word, Mr. Ridge." "Yes." "Then this is where we part." "It is." Coyle picked up his dog. He turned. He walked toward the draw, and he did not look back, and Jonah kept the rifle on the center of his spine until the shape of him was swallowed by the dark, and only then did Jonah lower it. He did not believe for 1 second that Samuel Coyle was going to Texas. He believed Samuel Coyle was going to ride to the nearest wire as fast as a horse could carry him, and he believed Samuel Coyle was going to tell Edgar Holm everything, and he believed the thing that bought Jonah time was not Coyle's word, but Coyle's greed, because Coyle would want the 5,000 split 2 ways instead of 8, and Coyle would try to get back up this ridge before the others, and that meant he would ride alone for at least a day before he gave up the secret. A day was a day. A day was enough. Jonah turned and started back up the slope. He was halfway to the cabin when he heard the second man. Not close. Maybe 80 yards off north side. A boot breaking crust where no boot had broken it. One sound. No repeat. A man who had frozen the second he understood he'd made a noise. Jonah did not turn his head. He kept walking the way he had been walking. He got to the porch. He tapped 3 times, then 2, then 1 on the door. The bar slid. He stepped inside. "Bar it." She barred it. "There's another one," he said quietly. "North side, about 80 yards out." Oh, God. He's been there the whole time. Coyle weren't alone after all. Will he come? Not tonight. He saw me take Coyle. He's waiting to see what I do. Which means we ain't got 2 days lady. We got 2 hours. Maybe less. Get the sled. It's under the eave on the east side. Pull it up to the porch and load it with the elk quarters off the hook and the bedroll and both rifles and every round of ammunition in the tin by the stove. Jonah. Move Margaret. She moved. She moved, and he watched her move, and he saw in the way her hands did not fumble that whatever had been broken in her a week ago was mending fast, and he thought again. Thomas Ellery had raised a hard daughter, and he had not known it, and Alistair Crane had tried to marry a soft woman and had not known it either, and both men had made the same mistake, and one of them was in the ground for it, and the other was sitting in a hotel in Denver with the curtains drawn. Jonah went to the table. He took the letter. He folded it. He took a second sheet of paper from the drawer where he kept his trapping records, and he took the stub of a pencil and he copied the letter out in his own hand as fast as he could, word for word every name. He put the copy in an oilcloth. He put the oilcloth in a tin. He pried up the floorboard under the stove, and he put the tin where the mice couldn't reach it, and he nailed the floorboard back down. She came back in with her arms full. "What are you doing?" "Insurance." "Against what?" "Against me dying before you do." "Jonah, get your boots, and wrap them scarves around your face, every inch. Eyes to forehead. If we lose an ear to frostbite tonight, we got bigger problems." They were out of the cabin in 22 minutes. Jonah pulled the sled. Margaret sat on it, wrapped in 3 blankets, and his second coat over his first coat, and the ruined pale blue silk was gone, burned in the stove before they left, and the letter original was stitched now into the inside of Jonah's own coat against his ribs, and the copy was under the floorboards, and the cabin's fire was banked down to look like a cabin where a man slept, and the door was barred from the inside, with a bar Jonah had rigged to fall by itself when he pulled a cord from outside. He did not go south. He went west, and then he cut north, and then he cut back east, and he made the sled cross its own tracks twice, because a man tracking him with a dog was going to spend 6 hours figuring out which set of tracks to follow, and 6 hours was 6 hours. Margaret did not speak for the first mile. In the second mile, very quietly, she said, "You said his name was Holm." "Yes." "Edgar Holm is alive. He's in Denver, runs a crew. My father's letter said Holm had I know what the letter said. Letter was wrong. Or Crane paid Holm to disappear, and then didn't disappear him enough. Holm poisoned my father. Yes. And he is the man hunting me. Yes, ma'am. She was quiet again. Then, Jonah. Yes. I am going to kill him. Jonah did not answer for a long moment. The sled runners hissed over the snow. Lady, he said, you ever killed a man? No. Then you ain't gonna kill Edgar Holm. I am. Lady, I am going to kill him, Jonah Ridge, and I am going to look him in the eye while I do it, and he is going to know who I am. I am not asking your permission. I am telling you what is going to happen. You may help me, or you may stand aside, but you may not tell me no. Jonah stopped pulling. He turned around on the trace. He looked down at her where she sat bundled on the sled, with only her eyes showing between the scarf and the hat, and the eyes were the green he'd seen that first morning. Sharp and counting exits. Except now, they were not counting exits. They were counting something else. All right, Jonah said. All right. All right. He turned back around. He picked up the trace. He started pulling again. That's it, she said. What else you want me to say? You expected a man to tell you no. I ain't that man, lady. Your father was in the ground 3 months before you knew how he got there. You got a right to your pound of flesh. I only ask one thing. Name it. Ask me first if I can do it for you. For you do it yourself. 'Cause it's a thing that marks a soul, and your soul's already had a hard year. She was quiet for a long time after that. Jonah. Yes. Why are you doing this? Pulling the sled, 'cause you'd freeze if I stopped. You know what I mean. He did not answer right away. 19 years ago, he said finally. I was 22 years old, and I was married, and I had a wife named Sarah and a little girl named Ruth, not quite 2. We lived on a homestead east of Cheyenne, and one afternoon while I was 20 miles off trading a horse, 3 men rode up to my house, and they took what they wanted, and they burned what they didn't, and when I came home, there was nothing left but smoke and 2 graves the neighbors had already dug, 'cause they didn't want me to see. The sled runners hissed. I spent 4 years hunting them 3 men, Margaret. Found the first in El Paso, found the second in a saloon in Deadwood, found the third in a jail cell in Kansas, which is where I met August Penn, who was the deputy on the door, and who let me in, and who looked the other way, and who has owed me nothing ever since, because he did that for me, and I have never been able to pay him back. And after I killed the 3rd man, I rode up into these mountains, and I decided I would never help another soul as long as I drew breath, 'cause helpin' is what got Sarah killed. Sarah had taken in a traveler a week before. A traveler who came back with friends. Margaret did not speak. And then last week, Jonah said, I walked down a ridge and saw a pale blue coat in the snow, and I walked past it, and I came back. Why did you come back? 'Cause it was February, and the woman in the coat was about the size Ruth would have been, if Ruth had lived. The silence after that was not a bad one. It was a held one. How old would she be now? Margaret asked softly. 21. I am 22. I know. They did not speak again for a long time. Near dawn, Jonah stopped the sled in a stand of lodgepole pine and said, We rest. 20 minutes. No fire. Where are we? 2 miles from Penn's. I don't walk up on Penn's place without looking first. He's got a habit of shooting first and asking second, and he ain't improved with age. Jonah? Yes. If he won't help us, he'll help us. If he won't, he will, Margaret. Jonah. He turned around and looked at her. If he won't, he said slowly, we go on to the next man. And if there ain't a next man, we go down out of these mountains by ourselves, and we get on a train, and we ride straight into Chicago, and we walk into the offices of the Tribune newspaper with that letter in our hand, and we make it public before Crane can stop us. That's the worst case. You understand me. The worst case is we win loud instead of quiet. All right. All right. He turned back. He took a strip of jerked meat from his coat. He tore it in half. He handed her half over his shoulder without looking at her, and she took it, and they chewed in the dark. "Jonah." "Yes." "Thank you for telling me about Ruth." He did not answer. But after a while he put his gloved hand back over his shoulder palm open, and she took it with her own mittened hand, and they sat like that for the last 4 minutes of the 20, and neither of them said a word. Then Jonah stood up, and he picked up the trace, and he started pulling again, because August Penn's cabin was 2 miles off and the sun was coming up behind them. And somewhere a day's ride south, a man was lighting a cigarette and reading a wire that said, "A woman in a pale blue coat had been seen on the ridge above the draw." And that man was Edgar Holm, and Edgar Holm was putting on his coat. And Edgar Holm was walking out into the street to the telegraph office, and Edgar Holm was sending a second wire. And the second wire was going to a hotel in Denver. And in that hotel, a man with soft hands and a gold watch was reading it by the light of a single lamp. And that man was smiling, because Alistair Crane did love very much to be the one who finished things himself. Jonah Ridge did not know any of that yet, but he felt it. He felt it the way a man feels a storm coming through the soles of his boots. He bent his head into the wind, and he pulled. August Penn's cabin sat in a clearing that had been cut by a man who did not want visitors and had made that fact legible from a long way off. Jonah left the sled in the pines 100 yards out, took the rifle and told Margaret to stay where she was and not to move and not to call out for him no matter what she heard. "Jonah, stay." He walked in alone, hands wide, rifle held across his body, barrel down. 30 feet from the porch, a voice came out of nowhere. "That far's far enough." Jonah stopped. "August." Jonah Ridge. "August, I am alone, and I am out of tricks, and I am askin'." A long pause. "Askin' what?" "A debt." Another pause, longer. "Come on in, Jonah. Slow. Rifle in your offhand barrel at the ground." Jonah walked in slow. The door opened before he reached it. The man behind it was 60 if he was a day, with a jaw like a bent nail and a shotgun in the crook of his arm like it belonged there. "You alone?" "I got a woman in the pines." "Jesus Christ, Jonah." "I know. A woman." "August, you show up on my mountain for the first time in 9 years with a woman. August, I need your barn, and I need your fire, and I need a day, maybe 2, and then I am gone, and you are free of me, and this is the last thing I will ever ask." August Penn looked at him a long time. Then he turned and spat off the porch, and he said, "Bring her in 'fore she freezes. We'll argue over what it costs me while she thaws." Jonah brought her in. August Penn watched Margaret come up onto the porch on Jonah's arm, with her scarf pulled down and her eyes raw from the wind, and something passed over his face that was not quite surprise, and was not quite recognition, and was not quite either. "Ma'am." "Sir." "You got a name?" "Lillian Voss." "Uh-huh." "Mr. Penn." "Ellery, ain't it?" Margaret stopped walking. Jonah stopped walking. August stood in the doorway, and he looked at her and he said, "Margaret Ellery, Thomas Ellery's girl, Pittsburgh Steel." Margaret said nothing at all. "I had a brother work 10 years in your daddy's mills," August Penn said. "Saw you once when you was 9 years old. You come down to the works with him on a Sunday, wore a yellow ribbon in your hair, and you asked my brother if the furnaces hurt the men who tended them, 'cause the men looked tired. And my brother said, 'No, ma'am, they don't hurt.' And you said he was lying because their hands was burned. And then you give him $1 out of your own pocketbook to buy gloves with, and my brother kept that dollar till the day he died. Which was a Tuesday 4 years later in a boiler explosion. Your daddy paid for his widow and me to bury him right." Margaret's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. "Your daddy was a decent man, Miss Ellery. I was very sorry to read he was gone. Mr. Penn, get inside 'fore I change my mind. And Jonah Ridge, if you have put that girl's life in my hands without telling me, I am going to beat you with the stock of this shotgun till one of us is tired, and it ain't going to be me." They got inside. The fire was real, and the coffee was black, and August Penn made them both sit down at his table, and he did not speak for a long time. He listened. Jonah did the telling. He laid it out short. The ridge, the coat, the letter, Coil, the second man, Edgar Holm alive in Denver, Alistair Crane in the Windsor Hotel with the curtains drawn waiting. When Jonah was done, August Penn went to a cupboard. He took out a bottle. He set 3 glasses on the table. He poured 3 fingers in each, and he pushed 2 of the glasses across, and he said, "Well, that's a hell of a thing." August. "Shut up a minute, Jonah. I'm thinking." He thought a minute. "Edgar Holm," he said. "You know him. I know of him. Ran whiskey out of St. Joseph, for the war ran other things after. Mean as a snake and twice as patient. You say he's running a crew for Crane out of Denver?" "Yes." "How big a crew?" 8, Coil said. "Maybe more." "And Crane himself is waiting in the Windsor." "Yes." August Penn knocked his whiskey back. "Then we ain't going to the newspaper, Jonah. That's fool's work." "August, hear me. You walk into the Tribune in Chicago with a letter, they hold it 3 days to verify. In 3 days, Crane's lawyers have killed the story, bribed the editor, and bought the press. That letter is worth something only in a courtroom where there's a judge who ain't his, and a bailiff who ain't his, and a witness who ain't his, and right now in this country, I can count the judges Alistair Crane don't own on one hand, and have fingers left over. Then what? Then we make him come to us, in a room we pick, with a law we brought." "How?" August Penn smiled for the first time since they'd come through the door, and it was not a nice smile. "You remember Jedediah Hawes?" "Judge Hawes. He's still alive. Alive and ornery, and retired to a little place outside Boulder, and he hates Alistair Crane with a hate that is personal because Alistair Crane broke his daughter's heart and her marriage and her father's pocketbook in that order 21 years ago. And Jedediah Hawes is still a federal judge on the rolls. Jonah never took the pension, said he might need it one day." "August, that's a courtroom, Jonah. That's a subpoena. That's a federal marshal instead of a county sheriff. And a federal marshal is the one kind of lawman Crane ain't bought yet because they don't sell." Margaret spoke for the first time. "How far is Boulder?" 2 days hard by horse. I got 3 horses." "Then we go." "Ma'am, we go tonight, Mr. Penn." "Ma'am, you ain't in shape to—" "I walked out of a snowstorm last week in a silk dress with my father's murderer 3 weeks in front of me. I will ride 2 days to Boulder tonight. I will ride 4 if you ask me. I will not sit in this cabin while Edgar Holm rides up this mountain to put his hands on me a second time. Get the horses, Mr. Penn." August Penn looked at her a long moment. He said, "Thomas Ellery raised a hell of a girl." "Yes, he did." "Horses in an hour." He got up. He did not make it to the door. The dog outside, a big black shepherd that had been lying on the porch since they came in, gave one low, hard bark. Not an alarm bark. A warning bark. The kind a dog gives when it has already decided what it thinks and is only telling the humans out of courtesy. August Penn went still. "Jonah, how far back did you say that second man was?" 80 yards behind the cabin." "You lose him." "I thought I did." "Thought ain't the same as did." The dog barked again hard. Then a third time. Then it went quiet, and the quiet was worse than the barking. August Penn crossed the room in 4 steps and put out the lamp with the palm of his hand. "How many?" "Couldn't see." "Jonah Ridge." "August, I swear to God I laid a trail that would have lost an Apache." "Then they got an Apache. Margaret on the floor, behind the stove, now." Margaret went. "Jonah, the west window. I got the door. Don't shoot till I shoot. If they call out, let 'em call. Don't answer." August. "I know, Jonah. I ain't mad. I'm a mean old man with nothing left to lose, and I've been waiting 20 years to shoot somebody that deserved it. This is a gift. Get to the window." Jonah got to the window. For a long, long minute there was nothing. Then a voice from the clearing. "Hello, the cabin." Jonah's hand tightened on the rifle. "We are peaceable men on the business of the law. We are seeking a fugitive woman wanted in the state of Illinois for the murder of her father, Thomas Ellery. We have a warrant sworn by a judge and signed in his hand. We ask only that you deliver her out to us, and no harm will come to any soul in that cabin." Margaret made a sound from behind the stove. It was not a word. It was something that came out of her throat without asking her mouth's permission. Jonah did not take his eyes off the tree line. "August," he said very quietly. "I heard him. They accused her of killing her own father. I heard him. Can they do that? Swear a warrant on a lie? Jonah, a man who can put a gentleman like Edgar Holm on a retainer, can have any warrant he wants wrote out for breakfast. They ain't here to arrest her. They're here to shoot her and say she drew first and produce the warrant at the inquest and walk away." "How many you figure?" "I figure 4. That's Holmes' working number. 3 shooters and a talker." "Which one's the talker?" "The one standing in the clear. Always is. He don't expect to catch a bullet. He's the one you want." Jonah thumbed the hammer back on his rifle. "August. Don't. August, I got a clean shot on the talker. You shoot him, the other 3 scatter, and then we are 3 people in a cabin with 3 shooters in the trees, and this thing goes till sundown and one of us catches it. You let him talk. You let him come closer. You let him think we're thinking about it. And when he's close enough to see the whites of our eyes, then you shoot him, because the other 3 are gonna have moved up with him, and you drop the talker, and I drop the one on the left, and you swing, and drop the one on the right, and the 4th one runs, and 4th ones always run. That's how this works. You done this before." "I done this exactly twice, Jonah, and I am alive, and the other fellas ain't, and that is the only reason I am alive to tell you how. Now shut up and breathe." The talker called out again. "Gentlemen, time's running short. Send her out, and this ends friendly." Nobody in the cabin moved. "All right," the talker called. "All right, I'm coming up. I'm putting my rifle on the ground. Look, hands up, just want to talk." "August. Wait. August. Wait, Jonah." The talker walked closer. 20 yards. 15. 3 of them are moving with him, August said softly. "Left, right, and one coming up the back. The back one's the Apache tracker." "How you know?" "'Cause I been watching the line, and I seen his shadow shift twice. 10 yards out, Jonah. 10. 8. 8. 6, Jonah, on my word." The talker stopped. He smiled. He said, "Last chance, gentlemen. Send her out, or now." 2 rifles went off inside the cabin at the same instant. The talker went down. The man on the left went down. The man on the right got off one shot that punched through the shutter above Jonah's head and sprayed splinters into his cheek, and August's shotgun roared a second time, and that man went down too. "Back!" Jonah shouted. "Backdoor the Apache!" The back door exploded inward. A man came through it with a pistol in each hand, and he was fast, and he was good, and he got one shot off into the floor 2 inches from Margaret's head before Jonah's rifle came around and caught him in the throat and dropped him where he stood. Then it was very, very quiet. August Penn was still standing at the front window with his shotgun smoking. Jonah was still at the west window with his rifle half raised. Margaret was behind the stove. "Margaret." "I'm here." "You hit." "No." "You sure?" "I'm sure, Jonah." "August." "I'm fine." Took some wood in the hand. "Fine." Jonah walked to the back door. He looked down at the man he had just killed. "August." "Yeah. This ain't Edgar Holm." "No. None of these 4 is Holm." "No. Which means Holm didn't come up this mountain with him. Which means Holm stayed down. Which means Holm knows where we're going." Jonah's head came up. "Boulder. They'd have wired 'fore they come up. Standard crew work. First thing you do for a job, you tell the boss where the job is. He knew this cabin the second Coyle figured it. So Holmes on his way to Boulder. Holmes already in Boulder. Waiting for us. Waiting for us." Jonah closed his eyes for 1 second and opened them. "Then we don't go to Boulder." "Jonah, we don't go to Boulder, August. We go straight to Denver, straight to the Windsor. We walk in the front door of that hotel, and we put a gun on Alistair Crane's breakfast table, and we walk him out of there in his own handcuffs, and we put him on a train to Chicago, and we hand him to a federal marshal ourselves, and the letter comes out in federal court in Cook County, Illinois, where Alistair Crane's money don't reach because it is a city he has never been to, and a judge he has never bought, and that is where this ends." August Penn stared at him. "Jonah, that is the most damn fool thing I have ever heard a man say in my life." "I know. That is suicide." "I know. He's got guards." "I know. He's got police on his pay." "I know, August. The Windsor Hotel has got 50 rooms, and he is in one of them, and you do not know which one." "No. And you are gonna walk in." "Yes." "With Margaret Ellery." "Yes." Because Edgar Holm is waiting for us in Boulder. Because every mile we move in this country, somebody is a day ahead of us, except the one place nobody would believe we'd go. Nobody goes at the man who sent the killers, August. Nobody. He's counting on that. He is sitting in that suite with the curtains drawn, and he is certain sure of one thing, which is that we are running. We ain't gonna run. We are gonna come. Margaret had stood up. She had walked to the table. She had picked up one of the pistols off the dead man by the back door, and she was checking the load in it the way somebody who had been taught by her father was going to know how to check the load in it. And August Penn looked at her, and he looked at Jonah, and he said, "God damn it. All right. I ain't letting you two do this alone. I got a cousin runs a livery in the north end of Denver. We go. Tonight. Hard ride. Don't stop. Your cabin. Cabin stands or it don't. I've been meaning to burn it down for years." They left in 40 minutes. They rode through the dawn, and they rode through the morning, and they stopped only to change horses at a stage station where August knew the man, and the man did not ask. And they were on the outskirts of Denver by the following midnight, with their horses half dead under them, and their coats white with frost, and Margaret Ellery riding upright in her saddle like a woman who had decided something she was not going to undecide. They did not go to August's cousin's livery. August went. He came back on foot 40 minutes later with 3 changes of clothes in a bundle, and a look on his face that was not a good look. "Jonah, there's a wire at the station. Alistair Crane is receiving guests tomorrow evening at the Windsor, a private supper in the ballroom, announced publicly an hour ago. Governor of Colorado is invited. Mayor of Denver is invited. Half the board of the Rio Grande is invited." "Why?" "'Cause he's engaged." Margaret went very still in her saddle. "He's what?" "Engaged, Miss Ellery, to a society woman out of Chicago name of Clara Vance. Announced today. Whole front page of the evening paper. He is sitting at a table tomorrow night in a ballroom full of the most powerful men in this territory. And he is putting a ring on another woman's finger. And he is doing it in public. And he is doing it fast because the minute she says yes, her family's name gets tied to his, and her family's name is cleaner than a Sunday sermon." "He is replacing me," Margaret whispered. "He is replacing you before you can come forward. Because once he's married into the Vance name, you calling him a murderer sounds like a jilted woman's jealousy. And that letter in your pocket is evidence against a dead man named Edgar Holm, and not one juror in 10 would convict a man who married Clara Vance on the word of a woman who ran away from her own wedding." Margaret did not speak. She did not cry. She did not move. She sat her horse and she looked at August Penn for a very long time, and then she said quietly, "What time tomorrow evening?" 8 o'clock. "Then we do not go to the ballroom at 8. "No. We go at 7:45, before the guests arrive, while he is still in the suite dressing. We walk in. We put the letter in his hand. We tell him that every newspaper in Chicago and New York will receive a copy of it by Western Union tomorrow at noon, unless he walks out of that hotel with us willingly to federal court under his own power." Margaret. "He will come, Jonah." "He won't, ma'am." "He will, because the thing Alistair Crane wants more than money and more than me is his name, and his name does not survive that letter. He will come, and he will hang, and he will hang legal, and I will be in the front row." Jonah looked at her. "You are not going to kill him." "No, Jonah." "You said—" "I said Edgar Holm. Alistair Crane I want alive. I want him alive, and I want him old, and I want him rotting in a cell, and I want him to read every newspaper that every day prints another piece of what he did. And I want him to know that the woman he tried to strangle in the snow is the one who walked him into that cell on her own feet, with her father's letter in her hand." Jonah Ridge did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, "August, what time does the hotel staff change shift?" 7. 7. All right. He turned his horse. "Jonah," August said, "you understand that if we walk into that hotel and Edgar Holm is in the lobby, we are 3 dead people before the clock strikes the hour." "I understand that, August." "And you understand that Edgar Holm is at this moment almost certainly in that lobby." "I understand that too." "Then what the hell is your plan?" Jonah Ridge turned in the saddle, and he looked at August Penn, and he looked at Margaret Ellery, and the first edge of dawn was beginning to come up behind them over the plains, and he said, "My plan, August, is that Edgar Holm is going to meet me first." Edgar Holm had made his office in a whiskey bar on Larimer Street, because Edgar Holm did not trust hotels and did not trust banks and did not trust quiet rooms where a man could be approached without being heard. The bar suited him. It was loud. It had 3 doors. The man who owned it owed him money and therefore owed him warnings, and the warnings came through a boy who ran between the bar and the telegraph office 4 blocks down, and the boy was paid in silver, and the boy did not ask questions. The boy was about to quit his job. Jonah Ridge caught him at the mouth of the alley behind the telegraph office at 6 in the morning, and he caught him gentle. He put his hand on the boy's shoulder and he said, "Son, I ain't gonna hurt you. I am gonna give you $20. I am gonna give you $20 to do one thing, and the one thing is to walk up to Edgar Holm in that bar and tell him that a man named Ridge is sitting in the lobby of the Windsor Hotel with a letter, and the man says if Holm ain't in the lobby by 7 o'clock, the letter gets handed to the desk clerk, and the desk clerk wires it to Chicago. You got that?" "Yes, sir." "You tell him that. You take the $20. You get on the first train out of Denver going anywhere, and you do not come back till spring. You understand me?" "Yes, sir." "Go." The boy went. August Penn, who had been listening from 10 feet away, said, "Jonah, that boy is going to tell Holm exactly what you told him to tell Holm, and Holm is going to come to the Windsor, and Holm is going to come with 3 men, and you are going to be 1 man in a lobby." "I know. Then what?" "Then Holm comes, and he comes fast, and he comes with his mind on me, and he don't think about the hotel staff, and he don't think about the back stairs, and he don't think about the supper that ain't happening for 13 more hours. He thinks about me in a chair in the lobby with a letter in my hand. And while he is thinking that, August, you are walking Margaret up the service stairs on the east side of the building to the 4th floor, and you are knocking on the door of suite 402, and she is handing Alistair Crane a piece of paper that ends his life. And you. I am keeping Edgar Holm occupied. Jonah. August. You are not coming out of that lobby. Likely not. Jonah. There is a thing a man says when he has decided to die, and you are saying it. August. I had 19 years in a cabin I did not deserve. I had a wife and a daughter I could not save. This morning I can save a woman, and I can put a man in the ground who poisoned a good man over brandy, and I can do it standing up. That ain't dying. That is the first honest living I have done since 1863. August Penn looked at him a long time. Then he said, All right, Jonah Ridge. All right. But I am telling Margaret first. No. Jonah. No, August. You tell Margaret first, and she walks into that lobby with me instead of up them stairs, and you know she does, and then this whole thing was for nothing. You walk her up them stairs, and you put that letter in Crane's hand, and you do not tell her what I am doing until it is done. Swear it. God damn you. Swear it, August. I swear it. They shook hands. They walked back to the hotel. At 6:45, Margaret came out of a back room of August's cousin's livery, wearing a plain gray traveling dress his cousin's wife had given her, and her hair pinned up under a plain gray hat. And she looked at Jonah, and Jonah looked at her, and she said, Why are you looking at me like that? Like what? Like you are saying goodbye. I ain't. Jonah. I ain't Margaret. Swear it. Margaret. Swear it to me. He did not swear it. He stepped in close to her, and he put one hand flat along her cheek, rough palm against her skin, for only a second, and he said very low, "Whatever happens in the next hour, I want you to know that carrying you up that ridge was the best thing I ever did in my life, and the second best thing was opening the door the next morning and finding you still breathing. Jonah, go with August, up them stairs. Don't turn around, don't look back. Put that letter in his hand, and you watch his face when he reads it. You watch it, Margaret. 'Cause that's the moment you've been owed for 3 months and ain't nobody gonna take it from you. Jonah, what are you going to do?" "My job?" "Jonah, go Margaret." August Penn took her arm. August Penn walked her toward the east side of the hotel. Margaret Ellery looked back over her shoulder one time, and Jonah Ridge stood on the sidewalk with his coat open and his rifle gone, and only a pistol under the coat at the small of his back, and he raised one hand to her, and she raised one hand to him, and then August turned her around a corner, and she was gone. Jonah walked through the front door of the Windsor Hotel. He walked across the lobby. He sat down in a leather chair facing the door, and he crossed one leg over the other, and he took out of his coat a folded piece of paper that was not the letter. The letter was sewn into the lining over his ribs, and a copy was under the floor of his cabin. And a second copy, August's cousin was at this very moment carrying to a man at the Rocky Mountain News. And he held the blank paper in his hand folded, and he waited. Edgar Holm came through the front door of the Windsor Hotel at 3 minutes to 7. He came alone. That was the first surprise. The second surprise was that he was a smaller man than Jonah had expected. Compact, neat, clean-shaven. He wore a suit that cost more than most men earned in a year, and he wore it well, and his hands were very, very still. He walked across the lobby. He stopped 10 feet from Jonah's chair. "Mr. Ridge?" "Mr. Holm, you have a letter for me." "I have a letter for Alistair Crane. You are the messenger boy." Something moved in Edgar Holm's face. Not much. A tightening at the eye. "Mr. Ridge, I am going to sit down in the chair across from you. I am going to have a civil conversation with you. And at the end of that conversation, you are going to hand me the letter, and I am going to walk out of this hotel, and you are going to walk out of a different door, and we are both going to live. Does that sound agreeable? Sit down, Mr. Holm." Edgar Holm sat down. He crossed one leg over the other in a way that was almost exactly the way Jonah had crossed his, and Jonah noted it and filed it, because a man who mirrored you was a man trying to put you at ease, and a man trying to put you at ease was a man about to try to kill you. "Mr. Ridge, where is Margaret Ellery?" "Dead." "I do not believe you. She did not make this ridge. The cold took her 3 nights ago. I buried her in the snow. I took the letter off her body. I am here for the $5,000. Edgar Holm looked at him. Edgar Holm smiled. "Mr. Ridge, that is a very good lie. It is better than most I have heard in my line of work. If I did not know for a fact that Margaret Ellery was alive and climbing the service stairs of this hotel at this exact moment, I might even believe you." Jonah did not move. "Yes," Edgar Holm said. "I have a man on the service stairs. I have 2 men in the alley. I have a man at the desk. I have a man at every door of this lobby, Mr. Ridge. You did not think I would come alone, did you?" "I thought you might." "Why?" "'Cause I thought you were the kind of man who liked to do the last part himself." "I am, after the other men have done the first parts." "Ah. Give me the letter, Mr. Ridge." "No. Mr. Ridge, Mr. Holm, I am going to tell you something you need to know. In about 4 minutes, a man named August Penn is going to hand Alistair Crane a copy of that letter in Suite 402. In about 7 minutes, a man at the Rocky Mountain News is going to receive another copy. In about 90 minutes, copies will be on trains bound for Chicago, New York, San Francisco, and St. Louis. By sundown tomorrow, every major paper in this country will have it. You cannot stop that, Mr. Holm. You cannot stop it because it has already happened. The only decision you have left is whether you are in a chair when the federal marshals come, or whether you are in a ditch." Edgar Holm's smile did not change. "Mr. Ridge, there is no man on the service stairs named August Penn. The man on the service stairs is named Willis, and he is mine, and he stopped your friend and the woman 4 minutes ago, and he has them at gunpoint on the 3rd floor landing at this moment." Jonah's heart went cold inside his chest, but his face did not change. "You are lying, Mr. Holm." "I am not lying." "You are lying, because if you had them, you would have said so when you sat down. You would not have made small talk. You would have said it the first breath you took. You are bluffing because you came in here alone, and you are now realizing you should not have." A flicker in Edgar Holmes' eye. Jonah saw it. Jonah stood up. Edgar Holmes stood up. "Sit down, Mr. Ridge." "No, sir." "Sit down, or my man at the desk puts a bullet through the back of your head." "Your man at the desk," Jonah said quietly, "is a fella named Raymond Dahl, who I paid $40 this morning to take the day off. Your man in the North Alley is named Hurst, and August Penn's cousin has him tied up in a hay stall with a rag in his mouth. Your man in the South Alley is named, I did not catch his name, but he is very badly concussed, because August hit him with a farrier's hammer about 6 minutes ago. And your man Willis on the service stairs did in fact exist, Mr. Holm, until about 2 minutes ago, when Margaret Ellery shot him through the chest with a pistol. She took off a dead man in August Penn's cabin yesterday morning, which is a story I will enjoy telling you the end of if you live long enough to hear it." Edgar Holmes' hand moved. It moved very fast, and it moved toward the inside of his coat. It did not get there. Jonah Ridge had been shooting game on a mountain for 19 winters, and game did not announce, and game did not hesitate, and his pistol was out and level before Edgar Holmes' hand reached his lapel, and Jonah shot him once low through the hip, because a man shot through the hip did not die, and did not run, and did not stand up in a courtroom and deny anything. Edgar Holmes went down. He did not scream. He hissed. "Ridge, Mr. Holmes, you lay there. You bleed quiet. There is a federal marshal walking through the front door in about 6 minutes because August Penn's cousin wired Boulder 4 hours ago from a station. Crane does not own, and Judge Jedediah Hawes put 2 of them on the first train, and they are coming up 17th Street at this moment, and you are going to jail Mr. Holmes for the rest of the short life that is left to you, and then you are going to hang for the murder of Thomas Ellery. And I would like you very much to think about Thomas Ellery's face right now, 'cause his daughter is about to show her father's letter to the man who paid you to kill him, and I would like you to picture that, Mr. Holmes, while you bleed." Edgar Holmes closed his eyes. He did not open them again that morning. Jonah Ridge stepped over him. He walked across the lobby. He took the stairs up 3 at a time. On the 3rd floor landing he found Willis dead on the carpet with one neat hole through his waistcoat, and Margaret Ellery standing over him with a pistol in her 2 hands that were not shaking. August Penn was beside her with his shotgun. Neither of them was hit. "Margaret? Jonah? You all right?" "I am all right." "You sure?" "I am sure, Jonah." "Good. 402. They went to 402. August Penn knocked. The door opened. Alistair Crane stood in the doorway in his shirt sleeves and a black silk waistcoat, half-buttoned, and he was 48 years old, and he was tall, and he was handsome, in the way that a knife is handsome, and he looked at August Penn, and he looked at Jonah Ridge, and then he looked at Margaret Ellery standing between them, and he did not look surprised. Alistair Crane did not do surprised. Alistair Crane had done the math the instant he heard the first shot downstairs, and he was already 3 moves ahead, and he smiled the smooth, untroubled smile of a man who had never in his adult life been in a room he did not own. "Margaret, my darling, thank God, we have been so worried." Margaret did not answer him. She held out the letter. Alistair Crane looked at the letter. He did not take it. "Margaret, you are ill. You have been ill for some time. Come inside, sit down. Let me send for a doctor." "Read it, Alistair." "Margaret, read it." He took it. He read it. Alistair Crane's face did not change. That was the thing Margaret Ellery would remember for the rest of her life. That his face did not change. That a man could read in his own hand the sentence that ended him, and his face could stay exactly the same, because somewhere deep inside Alistair Crane, there was a room with no windows and no door, and everything he had ever done had been put inside that room, and the door had been sealed, and Alistair Crane lived on the outside of it and never opened it. Not ever, not even now. He folded the letter. He handed it back to her. Margaret, this is a forgery. Alistair, a clever forgery. I will have it examined. I will have the man who wrote it found. I will have him. Alistair, you wrote it. I did not write it. You wrote it in your study on the 14th of October at 10 o'clock in the evening on the note paper my father gave you for Christmas 2 years ago. I know because I watched you through the hinge of the door, Alistair. I was 19 years old the night you killed my mother's cousin, and I watched you through the hinge of the door, and I did not understand what I was seeing, and I spent 3 years telling myself I had dreamed it, and then I opened my father's desk, and I found this letter, and I stopped telling myself anything. Alistair Crane was very, very still. Margaret? Yes, Alistair. What do you want? I want you to walk out of this hotel with these 2 men. I want you to walk to the federal courthouse on Stout Street. I want you to sit in a cell until your trial. I want you to answer for my father, and for Edgar Holmes' girl in Pittsburgh, and for my cousin Elise, and for every other soul whose name is in the second letter. I have not shown you yet, which is in a lockbox in a bank in Chicago, and which will be opened by a federal judge at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, whether you cooperate or not. Alistair Crane looked at her a long, long moment. And if I do not walk out of this hotel? Then Mr. Penn shoots you in the knee, Margaret said, and Mr. Ridge carries you out and you arrive at the courthouse anyway, only you arrive less dignified. Your choice, Alistair. Alistair Crane smiled the same smooth smile. Margaret, you have become. Put on your coat, Alistair. He put on his coat. He walked out of the suite between August Penn and Jonah Ridge with Margaret Ellery walking behind him, and they walked down the stairs past Edgar Holmes bleeding quietly on the lobby carpet, and they walked out the front doors of the Windsor Hotel at 7:23 in the morning, and 2 federal marshals were coming up the steps. And the senior marshal, a man with a white mustache who had been a deputy under Jedediah Hawes 30 years earlier in Kansas, took one look at Alistair Crane, and took one look at Margaret Ellery holding a folded letter, and took off his hat. Ma'am, Judge Hawes told me to expect you. Marshal. This the man. This is the man. Mr. Crane, sir, you are under arrest by authority of the Federal District Court for the Northern District of Illinois on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, murder in the first degree, and corruption of a federal officer. You have the right to obtain counsel of your choosing. Anything you say may be entered into evidence against you. Please extend your wrists. Alistair Crane extended his wrists. The cuffs went on. They did not make a sound. The trial ran for 7 weeks in Chicago. Every day the Tribune put a piece of it on the front page. Every day, Margaret Ellery sat in the front row in a plain black dress with Jonah Ridge on her left and August Penn on her right. And every day she watched Alistair Crane watch her. And every day his face changed a little more, because the room inside him with no windows and no door had finally been opened, and everything that had lived in it for 30 years was being carried out piece by piece and set on a table in front of 12 jurors from Cook County. And he could do nothing, nothing at all, because Alistair Crane's money did not reach Cook County, and Alistair Crane's friends did not reach Cook County. And Alistair Crane was for the first time in his life only a man. The jury was out 41 minutes. They convicted him on every count. He was sentenced to hang. He hanged on the morning of May 9, 1883, at the Cook County Jail. Margaret Ellery was not there. Margaret Ellery was in a hotel in Chicago with Jonah Ridge, and she was signing papers that turned every share of Ellery Steel over to a trust in the name of the workers. And she was signing papers that turned the family house in Pittsburgh over to a home for widows and orphans of mill accidents. And she was signing papers that set aside a fund in her father's name for the education of any child whose parent had died in any mill or mine or rail yard in the state of Pennsylvania. And when she was done signing, she pushed the pen away, and she put her hands flat on the table, and she did not move for a long time. Jonah Ridge sat across from her. Margaret. Yes, Jonah. You just gave away more money than I can count. I know. Margaret. I know, Jonah. Are you sure? She looked up at him. Margaret Ellery looked at Jonah Ridge across a table in a Chicago hotel with the morning light coming through the curtains, and she said, Jonah, The money killed my father. The money almost killed me. The money bought the men who came up that mountain for us. The money is the reason Alistair Crane looked at a 19-year-old girl and saw a business merger. I do not want $1 of it. I want a cabin. I want a fire. I want a man who opens the door when he does not have to and closes it when he does. I want to learn how to set a trap. I want to learn how to skin a rabbit. I want to learn how to be tired at the end of a day and know the tiredness was mine and nobody paid for it. I want to wake up in a place where the only person I have to be is the person I chose to be when I was 22 years old in a sled in the snow being pulled by a man I had known 4 days. I am sure, Jonah. I have never been more sure of anything. Jonah Ridge looked at her a long moment. All right. All right. You know it is cold up there. I know. You know there is no doctor for 50 miles. I know. You know I am 41 years old and my knees is going and my eyes ain't what they was. I know. You know I love you. She did not answer that for a long time. Then she said, I know, Jonah. All right. All right. They were married in August Penn's cabin on the 14th of June, 1883, by a circuit preacher who did not ask the bride her maiden name and did not need to, because the bride and the groom had only told him their Christian names, Margaret and Jonah, and those were the only names either of them intended to use again. August Penn stood up for Jonah. August Penn's cousin's wife stood up for Margaret. The preacher ate supper with them and rode out the next morning with a sack of smoked venison and a promise to say nothing to anyone, and he kept that promise until he died 26 years later. And he died still not knowing he had married the most famous missing heiress in America to a trapper in the Rocky Mountains. They lived 41 years in that country. They had 2 children, a girl they named Ruth and a boy they named Thomas. Ruth grew up to be a schoolteacher in Missoula. Thomas grew up to be a veterinarian in Bozeman. Neither of them ever knew that their mother had once owned a steel mill and a railroad and a house on Michigan Avenue with 24 rooms because their mother never told them, and their father never told them. And August Penn, who lived with them the last 9 years of his life after his own cabin burned, never told them either. And August Penn went to his grave with that secret, and he was glad to carry it. Jonah Ridge died in the winter of 1924 at the age of 82 in a bed Margaret had made for him, and Margaret held his hand, and he said one word at the very end, and the word was her name, and it was the real one, and she put her forehead against his forehead, and she said, I know, Jonah, I know, I know. She lived 11 more years. She died in the spring of 1935, and she was buried beside him, and the stone above them, in the little pine-shaded cemetery outside Bozeman, read only Jonah Ridge. Margaret Ridge. They chose each other. And that in the end is the whole of it, and the truth of it, and the heart of it, because a woman once lay half dead in the snow, with a secret fortune sewn into her coat, and a man who had sworn never to help another soul in this life, chose to carry her home, and everything that came after the killers, the courtroom, the hanging of a powerful man, the money given away, the cabin in Montana, the 41 quiet years, and the 2 children and the grave under the pines. Everything that came after was the answer to one question asked on one cold morning on one lonely ridge, and the question was whether a man could be more than the worst thing that had ever happened to him. And the answer was yes, and the answer will always be yes, and the answer was yes, because Jonah Ridge opened a door he did not have to open, and Margaret Ellery walked through it. And together, they proved what this story has been telling you from the first frozen minute to the last warm one, that the greatest fortune a soul can ever own is not gold and is not blood and is not a name carved in the marble of a bank, but is simply and forever the person who stands beside you when the world comes, and the choice you make to stand beside them back, and that fortune once chosen cannot be stolen, cannot be bought, cannot be hunted down in the snow, and cannot ever be taken away.